If the smartest, richest people in the room couldn't see the manipulation happening to them, what makes you think you can see what's happening to you right now? This is not an insult. This is a warning. Because what you're about to learn reveals a mechanism so deeply embedded in your psychology that it operates completely beneath your awareness. And the most terrifying part? The smarter you think you are, the more vulnerable you become. Let me show you exactly what I mean. In the early 1820s, a Scottish soldier named Gregor MacGregor walked into London's most exclusive clubs. He didn't ask for money. He offered an opportunity. He claimed a Central American king had appointed him cacique, prince, of a thriving colony called Poyais. Fertile land, deep harbours, gold in the hills. He showed maps, official seals, a flag, wealthy investors, doctors, merchants, aristocrats, handed over their fortunes. Over 200 sold everything, boarded ships, and sailed toward a future they believed was real. They arrived to find nothing. No city, no harbour, just jungle, disease, starvation. More than half never came home. And then, something happened that psychologists still study. The survivors didn't blame MacGregor. They defended him. They insisted he had been betrayed by his subordinates, that Poyais must exist somewhere else, that if they just tried again, it would work. Why? Because admitting the truth would cost them something more valuable than money. It would cost them their identity. These weren't fools. They were educated, accomplished people who prided themselves on judgment. The moment they acknowledged they'd been conned, that self-image would shatter. So their egos made a different choice. Protect the lie. Defend the manipulator. Stay blind. This is the trap you're sitting in right now. Not because someone is actively conning you, but because you have constructed a version of yourself that cannot afford to see certain truths. And here is where dark psychology reveals its most brutal secret. Averageness is not a failure of effort. It is not about working harder or wanting more. Averageness is an engineered state, a manufactured compliance that feels like freedom because you chose it. Except you did not choose it. Your ego did, to protect you from a truth that would require you to change everything. The cage you're in right now has no bars. It has mirrors. And every direction you look, you see a version of yourself that confirms you're exactly where you should be. But here is where the trap is set even deeper. Your conscious mind is a gatekeeper. It questions. It doubts. It pushes back against anything that threatens your existing beliefs. But here's what nobody tells you. There's a back door, and it's been wide open your entire life. The subconscious mind operates on completely different rules. It doesn't analyze. It doesn't reject. It simply absorbs every single input without discrimination. This is the mechanism that ensures 99% of people stay exactly where they are. Think about how advertising actually works. You see a commercial once, and your conscious mind dismisses it. I don't need that. That's manipulation. I'm smarter than this. But the advertiser doesn't care about your conscious rejection. They're not targeting the gatekeeper. They're targeting the back door. So they show you that same message again, and again, and again, 50 times, 100 times, 1,000 times across your lifetime. And somewhere around exposure number 47, something shifts. You're walking through a store. You see that product. And without any conscious decision, your hand reaches for it. You'll even tell yourself you chose it. You'll rationalize the purchase with logic that feels entirely your own. But that decision was made for you weeks ago, through repetition that bypassed every defense you thought you had. Now apply this to everything you've been exposed to since childhood. Messages about what's realistic, what's achievable, what people like you can expect from life. The instructions for being average aren't written on a board somewhere. They're running in the background of your operating system. Invisible, automatic, constant. And this is why willpower fails. Every single time. You cannot fight a program you cannot see. You cannot resist instructions that feel like your own thoughts. You cannot outwork a subconscious directive that's been reinforced 10,000 times before you even turned 18. The concrete hardens a little more every day. Every passive hour of consumption, every unchallenged assumption, every belief you inherited but never examined. Watch how this plays out. Most people will hear this and feel a flicker of recognition. They'll nod. They'll agree intellectually. And then they'll scroll to the next video while the same invisible program continues running. But here's where the trap gets even darker. Because the forces programming your subconscious are not random. They are engineered. Every notification, every headline, every scandal that dominates your feed for 72 hours before vanishing into nothing. None of it is accidental. While you're arguing about celebrity drama or political theatre, decisions that shape your financial future are being made in rooms you'll never enter, by people whose names you'll never know. And there's a second strategy, even more insidious. The system treats you like a child. Watch how advertisements speak to you. Notice the language in public announcements. It's soft, simplified, designed to bypass your critical thinking and appeal directly to your emotions. This is not a conspiracy. This is documented strategy. But here's the mechanism that truly imprisons the masses. A crisis emerges. Fear spreads. You react. And suddenly, a pre-packaged solution appears. A solution that somehow always maintains the existing power structure, always keeps you dependent, always ensures you need the system more than it needs you. You're not crazy for sensing this pattern. Society requires stability to function, and stability requires predictability. The system doesn't need you to succeed. It needs you to stay in your lane, pay your taxes, consume your content, and never ask dangerous questions. Your ambition, your desire to break free from average, that makes you a threat. Not to individuals, to the structure itself. This is why playing by the rules feels so hollow. The rules weren't written to help you win. They were written to keep the game running smoothly. And a smooth game requires most players to lose quietly. You've been following a playbook designed by people who benefit from your mediocrity. So here's the hard truth that changes everything. If the entire system is built to hold you at baseline, then following its prescribed path guarantees one outcome. You stay average. Forever. The question becomes brutally simple. What happens when you stop playing their game entirely? And this brings us to a secret even more dangerous. You just learned about the filter that shapes reality before you see it. But here's where it gets truly disturbing. What if someone else installed that filter? And what if you have zero memory of it happening? Richard Bandler built a career on something that should unsettle you deeply. Patient after patient walked into his sessions, struggling with phobias, addictions, and self-destructive patterns that had controlled them for decades. They walked out, transformed. Completely different people. But here's the part that changes everything. When asked what Bandler actually did to them, they couldn't answer. Not because they were hiding something, because they genuinely had no idea. The intervention was invisible. Total behavioral change. Zero conscious memory of how it happened. Think about what that means. Your mind can be fundamentally rewired without you ever knowing it occurred. No memory. No trace. No evidence to examine or reject. This is undetected influence at its most complete. And before you dismiss that as paranoid, understand something critical. The most effective manipulation leaves no footprint. You can't resist what you can't detect. You can't fight programming you don't remember receiving. Now connect this to your own life. That hesitation you feel before asking for a raise. That fear that stops you from starting your business. That strange contentment with a life that's smaller than your potential. You think these are your thoughts, your natural personality, your authentic self. But what if they're scripts, installed by parents who meant well, but feared your ambition? By teachers who rewarded compliance over creativity? By a society that needs you predictable? The record shows a brutal truth. You were being programmed before you could speak, before you could question, before you had any defense against authority figures who shaped your subconscious like wet clay. And here's the trap that keeps 99% of people average forever. If you can't remember the programming being installed, how can you possibly delete it? You can't use logic against something that bypasses logic entirely. You can't resist through willpower what operates beneath your awareness. This is why reading self-help books changes nothing. Why motivation fades by Tuesday. Why you keep returning to the same patterns no matter how many times you promise yourself different. The cage isn't locked from the outside. But this next law reveals something even more dangerous about how that cage was constructed. Every choice you make, every single one, it comes down to two invisible strings: fear and desire. That's it. That's the entire operating system running your life. And right now, someone is pulling those strings without you even knowing. Your brain is ancient hardware running on survival software. It only knows two commands: move toward pleasure, run from pain. And it's the binary code keeping you locked in average. Think about your last major decision, the job you took, the relationship you stayed in, the risk you didn't take. Strip away the logic. Peel back the rationalizations. What's left? You either wanted something or you feared something. Now here's where it gets dangerous. Manipulators have figured out your dominant pole. Some people run primarily on desire. They chase. They acquire. They're always reaching for the next thing. Others run on fear. They protect. They avoid. They calculate worst-case scenarios. Which one are you? Because whoever knows your answer controls your behavior. They know exactly which button to push. Show the desire-driven person a vision of success, and they'll follow anywhere. Threaten the fear-driven person with loss, and they'll comply with anything. This is how you get steered onto the safe path, the predictable path, the average path. But here's the truth that cuts even deeper. Those goals you're chasing right now, the house, the title, the lifestyle, you think those are your ambitions. They're not. They were installed, programmed by decades of social conditioning, by parents who wanted security, by media that showed you what success is supposed to look like, by algorithms feeding you curated visions of happiness. You're not chasing your dreams. You're chasing someone else's blueprint while believing it's your own. True freedom requires something almost nobody attempts. You have to decouple your actions from these binary strings entirely, not suppress fear, not chase desire, but act from somewhere outside both. Most people hear this and nod, then go right back to running their fear-desire programs tomorrow. But you're still here, which means something in you recognizes this trap. And that recognition leads us to something even more insidious. You've been blaming yourself this entire time. Every failure, every missed opportunity, every moment you watched someone else succeed while you stayed stuck. You looked in the mirror and whispered the same poisonous words. What's wrong with me? Nothing. Nothing is wrong with you. That voice cataloguing your inadequacies at 3 in the morning. You didn't create it. It was installed. Consider what this means. You don't need guards when prisoners believe they deserve the cell. You don't need propaganda when the target writes their own criticism. The perfect control mechanism turns the victim into their own warden. And here's the brutal irony. The higher your potential, the easier you are to trap. Intelligent, ambitious, driven people are the most vulnerable to this protocol. Why? Because they believe in accountability. They believe in personal responsibility. So when the system fails them, they don't question the system. They question themselves. Every rejection becomes evidence of unworthiness. Every setback confirms the suspicion that something fundamental is broken inside. The inner critic grows louder, sharper, more precise. And you never once stop to ask where that voice actually came from. It came from outside you. Every advertisement showing perfect lives you'll never achieve. Every success story carefully edited to hide the advantages. Every motivational message that whispers you just need to work harder, be better, want it more. The message is always the same. Your circumstances are your fault. Your poverty is laziness. Your anxiety is weakness. Your stagnation is a character defect. This is not motivation. This is neutralization. Because a person drowning in self-blame has no energy left for anything else. They're too busy fighting themselves to notice who's holding them underwater. Stop, right now. Recognize what this actually means for everything you've believed about yourself. You aren't failing because you are weak. You are failing because you are running a program designed to make you fail. And that program was written by people who profit from your paralysis. The inner critic isn't yours. But here's where this gets even darker. There's a specific type of person who escapes this trap entirely. And what separates them from everyone else will disturb you. You've been told that good people win, that kindness, empathy, and playing by the rules will eventually pay off, that the ruthless ones get what's coming to them. History proves this is a story designed to keep you passive. In 2012, psychologist Kevin Dutton partnered with former SAS soldier Andy McNabb to study something deeply uncomfortable. They wanted to map the psychological profile of humanity's most dangerous individuals. What they found should disturb you. The psychological profile of an incarcerated serial killer is nearly identical to that of elite surgeons and chief executives and special forces operators. Read that again. The same traits. Ruthlessness, emotional detachment, fearlessness under pressure, the ability to make decisions without being paralyzed by empathy. The difference between the surgeon saving your life and the killer taking one. It wasn't the presence of these traits. It was how they were directed. One learned to aim the weapon at disease. The other aimed it at people. This shatters the moral binary you were raised on. These traits aren't evil. They're tools. Neutral instruments that can build empires or destroy lives depending entirely on where you point them. And here's the violent pivot you need to understand. The 99% stay average because they've been conditioned to suppress these exact traits. Society told you ruthlessness is bad. Emotional detachment is cold. Fearlessness is reckless. So you buried them. You pushed them into the shadows of your psyche. You learned to feel guilty every time ambition flickered inside you. Meanwhile, the 1% integrated the shadow. They didn't pretend these drives didn't exist. They channeled them into elite performance. The surgeon who can operate on a child's brain without his hands trembling is not a monster. He's someone who learned to weaponize detachment for a higher purpose. You have these same traits inside you. Right now. Dormant. Suppressed. Waiting. The question isn't whether you possess them. Every human does. The question is whether you'll keep them locked away because someone told you they were wrong, or whether you'll finally integrate what you've been running from. But here's the truth that most people are too afraid to see. Knowing this changes nothing by itself. You've made it this far. You've seen the traps, the ego, the subconscious filters, the engineered distraction, the invisible influence, the fear and desire binary, the self-blame protocol, the cold precision of the 1%. And now your brain is telling you something dangerous. It's whispering that you're safe now, that awareness is armor, that knowing these patterns means they can no longer touch you. This is the final trap, and it's the deadliest one. Conscious knowledge does not overwrite decades of subconscious conditioning. You can read every book on manipulation. You can watch every video on dark psychology. You can memorize every technique in existence, and still wake up tomorrow running the same programs. Because knowing about a virus is not the same as removing it from your system. Think about this. You know exactly how advertising works. You understand the tricks, the emotional triggers, the artificial scarcity, the social proof manipulation, and you still bought that thing you didn't need last month. Knowledge sat in your conscious mind. Conditioning lived in your subconscious. Conditioning won. It always wins when you treat awareness as the finish line. The control you've been learning about operates in layers. Surface manipulation. Deeper emotional programming. Foundational identity beliefs installed before you could speak. Each layer protects the one beneath it. Passive learning only scratches the surface. It makes you feel enlightened while leaving the architecture completely intact. This is why most people who discover dark psychology change nothing. They collect information like trophies. They feel superior to the masses. They mistake recognition for transformation. Meanwhile, the same patterns keep running. The same reactions keep firing. The same invisible hands keep pulling the strings. Active deprogramming is different. It's uncomfortable. It requires you to question beliefs you didn't know you had, to feel the resistance and push through anyway, to rebuild your mental architecture brick by brick. This isn't a lesson you finish. It's a fracture that starts here. Everything you've heard is useless if it stays intellectual, if it becomes another piece of content you consumed and forgot, another insight that made you feel sharp for an hour. The 1% don't just know these principles, they live them, they practice them. They rewire themselves through repetition until new patterns become automatic. And this brings us to the decision that separates everyone who watches this from everyone who transforms because of it. You've traveled through 8 invisible prisons, 8 mechanisms designed to keep you exactly where you are. And now you stand at a threshold most people never even know exists. Let me paint 2 futures for you. In the first, you close this video. You feel a brief spark of clarity. Maybe you share it with someone. And then tomorrow arrives. The alarm sounds. The routine begins. The subconscious filter activates. Within 72 hours, everything you've absorbed dissolves back into the noise of average existence. Your ego rebuilds its walls. The media resumes its programming. Fear and desire pull you through the same predictable patterns, and that quiet desperation settles back into your chest like an old familiar weight. This is the path of the 99%, not because they lack intelligence, not because they lack desire, but because awareness without action is just entertainment. Now picture the second future. You recognize that everything keeping you average operates below the surface. So you go below the surface. You stop fighting your programming and start rewriting it. You become the architect of your own subconscious. This is the art of deliberately engineering your environment, your inputs, your associations, your daily rituals, designed to serve the person you're becoming instead of the person you were programmed to be. The 1% understand something the masses never will. You don't rise by trying harder within a broken system. You rise by redesigning the system itself. Every belief you hold, every automatic reaction, every invisible boundary around your potential. These were installed without your permission. But they can be dismantled with your intention. The door is open now. It's been open this entire time. The only thing standing between you and the other side is your willingness to leave your old self behind. Not the dramatic death of ego you might imagine. Something quieter, a steady dismantling, a patient reconstruction. The person who started this video no longer needs to exist. They served their purpose. They brought you here. What emerges next is your decision. The 99% will watch this and feel something. The 1% will watch this and become something. You already know which path calls to you. The only question left is whether you'll answer.